So now we're back on the Ustream Islam for part 2. So yeah, just kind of winding up with things. You've got to understand your status, your name. So you understand the importance again of your name, Judicial Proclamation, Islam. So now it's 8:10. We got about 20 minutes left. I'm gonna open the floor up. Everybody, you can turn your mics on, and all that good stuff. Hit me in the chat if you've got any questions. But at this time, I'm just kind of opening the floor, and we'll just kind of go from there and just have closing remarks like we do. Little Q&A if we can get it in. But yeah, if you guys got any questions, like I said, hit me in the chat box. If you are seeing this later on Ustream or YouTube, message me. You can always hit the channel, or you could leave a comment in the comment box, or you can email me, and we'll roll those questions over into next class if need be. But yeah, it looks like somebody's typing right now. But yeah, so that's pretty much my spiel. I just wanted to make sure that you guys had a basis and understanding as to why we do the name, and Judicial Proclamations. And I wanted you guys to read that so that you'd have a context as to what I was talking about today when I started going into some of these other things, because these documents are actionable documents, but for protocol purposes, we iterate that they need to be in place to keep things in harmony and in order so that everybody is on the same page. But Islam, we got a question just came in. So it's peace. Why is there a sense of caution that I sense from some Moors in terms of claiming nationality? So the sense of caution, it could be a number of things. The sense of caution could be from the realization that most of the time, and this has just been my instance of seeing people who knew about nationality and all of a sudden they're trying to get on. Typically, they heard about nationality and birthrights either, when they were younger or from somewhere else, right? And oftentimes, unfortunately, they don't do any research into it. So when we're dealing with the matrix of things, you're looking at quote unquote sovereign citizen claims, right? Which is what Europeans started. You're looking at Negroes claiming to be Moors, who try to tell Moors that they need to be naturalized into a corporate, wardship structure that has nothing to do with the Constitution at the end of the day. But then they want to use they want to try to use the civil rights, and Lincoln and all of that stuff as justification as to why you have to go this route. And you've got other quote unquote grand sheiks out there who just don't say anything, right? And so because of that, if you're just coming in and you understand how government's supposed to be working, and you understand how organizations are supposed to be structured, and you understand protocol and things, you come in looking for certain things to be in place, right? And for them to be in working order. When you don't find them, you measure them based on the Constitution, and you consider it to be valid or invalid based on the facts, right? And too often when Moors come in, they're looking for that support structure, and too often they don't find it in the centralized, organized form that they were expecting it. When they compare, the church or the mosque or the synagogue and how it operates to Moorish science, because they're looking for church. They're looking for clubism. When nationality and birthright, I, self, law, and master is more internal than it is external, right? And from my perspective, and this is just Nunaji talking, from my perspective, the caution and the hesitation is because they're unsure at that moment as to whether or not, A, they're going to get caught in their BS that they've been talking, for God knows how long prior to Moorish science, because, I got Moors who, they were Hebrew Israelites, they were Nuapians before they was just, Noble Ali, studying Moors, Nation of Islam Moors, quote unquote, I mean, the list goes on. You know, whatever background you can imagine, they were that before they were quote unquote Moors, or before they realized they were Moors, and you know, because of that background, you know, they have some apprehension and realize that these, you know, a lot of the, you know, when you talk about the police and everything, they are an offshoot of the gangs in New York, like for real, like for real. So a lot of people who talk gangster ain't really ready to walk it out with gangsters on that level, and so that's another place where the apprehension comes from. You know what I mean? But if you understand that Second Amendment and you understand that, you know, that Constitution, you know, a lot of that goes out the window. But if you know, you're trained, you know, and I do reiterate, well trained, because guaranteed they are. And keep in mind, in the report that came out about white supremacy and things of that sort, that the FBI put out, they mentioned how white supremacist groups were infiltrating the Army and National Guard and whatnot, and getting certain specialized training, right, in the military, so that they could, you know, be able to do certain guerrilla warfare tactics, right? And then if you just look at the history of the Klan going all the way back, you know, to its early days, they were you know, known as robber barons and you know, slave patrols that went out, you know, rummaging and pillaging things. So you're dealing with a you know, couple, you know, decades worth of that. And again, that's where a lot of the apprehension comes from, because they're still thinking that these individuals are out here in numbers, in mass, like they were back then. You know what I mean? When, if you really do the statistics on things today, you know, quote unquote, Indo-Europeans are outnumbered right now, and they're quickly, you know, declining. You got negative birth rates and everything. So it's a lot of, again, psychological, social nonsense, and unfortunately, because Moors don't pay enough attention to what's going on in the international, you know, the international sphere. Because if they looked at what the UN was talking about, like I'm gonna pull this up, right? I'll pull this up and show you guys just what our people are not paying attention to, right? So, you know, because the international community, they talk about these things, and they come out, and nobody really brings up these issues or makes note of it. Yep, and don't forget you can't forget the propaganda that they put out there. The propaganda, like, oh, Moors, you know, stealing houses and all the rest of this type stuff, and mansions and whatnot. Like, all right, granted, if you're gonna claim a property, you don't go claim a mansion, right? Because there's no way that you had anything to do with that amount of value being created. You know what I mean? In that instance, unless you can show me where you know, did some upgrades or something, then maybe I might be able to rock with you on that argument, you know, slightly. But it's just an argument, doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna win. So I want to pull this up and show you guys again what they talk about and what comes out. And this is just, you know, I just did a quick Google, but I want to read this, you know, just read some of this, and you know, we get a sense of what's going on. So 117 countries slam American police brutality at UN Human Rights Council. And this is coming from mintpressnews.com, and this is May 13th, 2015 for the record. And it says, critics across the board urged improvements in training methods and legislation, and included goals to eliminate racism and end excessive force. Right? Just when you guys think racism, just think Negroism, right? And colonialism. In what could hardly be called a surprise, the UN Human Rights Council chastised the U.S. over its epidemic of police violence, discrimination, needless killings, and general neglect, following through with recommendations made in its first review in 2010. The Universal Periodic Review, or UPR for short, takes place every 4 years to scrutinize the human and civil rights practices of each of the UN's 193 member nations. Delegates of the 117 countries took the opportunity to lambast. 117 countries took the opportunity to lambast the U.S.'s record of civil rights violations exacted by its brutal and racist police forces. So this is public record at the UN. In an attempt to fend off the inevitable, James Cadogan, a senior counsel in the Department of Justice's Human Rights Division, said the U.S., quote, must, quote, rededicate ourselves to ensuring that our civil rights laws live up to their promise. See, because they're just a promise, it's a covenant, end quote, listing several, quote unquote, tragic deaths that sparked numerous demonstrations and wide-scale unrest across the country that did nothing, for the record. It did nothing but rile up emotions and stir up people and, hurt folks' feelings and tear up property. And did anybody put anything on the record? Did anybody charge anybody after these folks got off? Nope. Did any group of community actually put anything on the record, to put these people behind bars, or did they ask for permission, or did they ask for somebody to do their job who wasn't doing their job in the first place? I'll let you figure that out. Tragic deaths that sparked numerous demonstrations, wide-scale unrest. However, he's seen to be blind to the fundamental basis of such outrage, saying the U.S. wishes, quote, to identify and address potential policing issues before they become systematic problems. Really? Even asserting a fictitious good record of holding violations accountable. See, everybody's in a delusional state, because if they admit to the truth, then somebody's got to get locked up. All right? And oftentimes that's going to be the people who are out there talking in public, right? And because people are waking up so fast, they cannot cycle these jokers out of their positions fast enough for the people to miss who is it that ain't been doing their job, and to not be able to figure it out. They can't get them out of office fast enough. You know what I mean? Because people they're waking up and they're holding these people accountable. Why? Because there's a Constitution, Article 6, so on and so forth. Anyway, we're proud of the work we've done since our last UPR. Most would disagree. What the U.S. representatives touted as improvements actually do more to highlight the system. Why? Because when they open their mouth about this stuff, it just, puts them further in the hole. What the U.S. representatives touted as improvements actually do more to highlight the systemic issue they claim to be on the lookout for. Cadogan cited 400 instances in the past 6 years in which charges were brought against law enforcement officials, but this doesn't figure into the disproportionately light punishment that often results from the prosecution of police officers. Even his own preemptive statement, naming Michael Brown and Eric Garner as examples, speaks far more to police impunity than accountability, and is hardly reflective of the totality of incidents. Over 400 people have been killed by police in 2015 alone. All right, and the end of the year estimates, of course, are a lot higher than that. Chad considers the United States of America, or U.S., to be a country of freedom. So he considered the United States of America to be a country of freedom, but recent events targeting black sectors of society have tarnished its image, said Awanda Agui, the delegate from that country. The representative from Nambia, Gladys Pickering, echoed the general consensus, saying the U.S. needs, quote, to fix the broken justice system that continues to discriminate against marginalized communities despite recent waves of protests over racial profiling and police killings of unarmed black men. Right? And you guys, can check it out. I'll drop a link. I'll finish it. I'll drop a link in the info section below on YouTube, so you guys can check it out later. But I just wanted to, kind of get that on the record so you guys can see, like I said, that the UN and the international body have already spoken to this time and time again. You know what I mean? They've spoken to this issue of status and nationality, ad nauseum. It's up to us as Moors, as conscious individuals, to let it be known for the record that if you don't step up and claim your free national name, you're going to be classed as undesirables. I don't care what that free national name really is at the end of the day, but it needs to be proclaimed for the record. German, Polish, Scottish, wherever you come from, claim that. Because otherwise, you're nothing. You're nobody at law. And I'm really speaking to those who are unconscious at this point. The reason why you're being mistreated, the reason why you're getting railroaded 9 times out of 10 is because you're not demonstrating an honor to your ancient foremothers and forefathers. And when you demonstrate that honor to your ancient foremothers and forefathers, the world will recognize that honor and will treat you accordingly because you're living the life accordingly. Islam. But if it's not happening, then you need to make it incumbent upon those who are in leadership or step up to leadership, to the level of leadership, to make those changes that need to happen. And just to stick with the sign of the times and everything. And I'll close with this: if you've got an issue with a football player, okay, who, granted, yes, they may get paid to throw a football or a pigskin around, but they also have to live here, okay? They also have to be profiled when they don't have that jersey on, right? Because without that jersey, without that number, or without that cognomen that you've given them, which I don't think Kaepernick is a Moorish name. Not that I've done too much research on it, but Colin and Kaepernick just don't sound like the most Moorish thing in the world. So even he too got bit by the same 13th and 14th Amendment bug that we all got bit by. All right. Shouts out to Randall Ill, out there used to play for the Steelers. But what at the end of the day is it going to take for us to realize that we got bamboozled? What is it going to take for us to realize that we've been put into slavery, and then that slavery has been institutionalized and maintained by our conditional mindset to maintain the status quo, right? So we have to get over these things. We had to get past a lot of these issues and a lot of these apprehensions, like the brother asked about, in order to act in full life, be in full life, and in doing that, knowing what it really means and not having any fear behind that. Because fear, some people say, is false evidence appearing real. Okay, once you have the evidence, once you have the facts, the fear will dissolve. You know what I mean? Once you understand, and once you get into that Judicial Proclamation, you understand what Title 18 has in it, and specifically why Chapter 2, 241, 242 is there, and you understand the power of that, that statute, the false evidence appearing real that you have no remedy at law, and there's nothing you can do, right? Or the false evidence appearing real that you don't know how to file something, or you don't know where to start, begins to dissolve. Why? Because when you're dealing with the law and you're dealing with certain violations, 241, 242 is broad enough that you can easily start there and work your way down. Right? You can start with fraud and work your way down from there. Don't start with what you think. Start with what works. Let's try that. Start with what works. And then go with what you think after you've studied, say, as some more say, RV Bay publications for a year, 2 years, 6 months. It really shouldn't take you more than 6 months really to read through it, But after you've studied, then do what you think from your studies. You know what I mean? Because if you just go off what you think and you're still in that Negro mindset, you're gonna lock yourself up every time. Because you're going off of the propaganda, the false matrix, right? And you're trying to do all these things, and you're plugged into the wrong socket. You're just all out of order. You playing cards with 3, 4 different decks and don't know that you've got one deck, you've got one suit, you know what I mean? That's the Trump suit. And everything else, falls in place after that. Once you see the hierarchy of the law, being the treaties and the Constitution, and then, and then the divine laws and divine law period governing all events being behind that, then you start to see, again, the hierarchy, the order. You're able to line things up. And that false evidence appearing real, that has you going, studying this, studying that, and wanting to do, 1099 OIDs and, all this stuff, and wanting to file this with these people and write your life away, which, again, if you don't know how to live within contracts, I don't suggest you sign anything. I don't suggest you agree to anything, you know what I mean, until you have a better understanding of the verbiage. You're going to run into those problems if you don't take that time out, and you're going to have those apprehensions, you're going to have that fear, because that's your common sense telling you, fool, you need to pay attention. Not to say that you're a fool or whatever, but you need to pay attention to what's going on around you. You know what I mean? That's your spidey senses tingling. Say, hey, I might be getting into something that's serious. Okay? Because government is real business. Government is big business. But it's real business at the end of the day. It's serious. And that's why the prophet said that we had to come back to the constitutional fold of government so that we can take our place amongst the affairs of men. Because it's through the government and our governmental activities that we're able to do everything else, Islam. And we're able to set up every other institution. Because what? Look at the U.S. They quote unquote set themselves up off of that constitution, and they create amendments that create departments or other branches of government up under the main 3 branches of government. Okay? Or they operate like separate branches of government. They're really just departments and sub-departments of the corporation. But they'll come to you with the authority like they're a whole, separate branch of government by themselves. But then they, and they operate independent with their own oversight and whatnot. And they have their own committees that oversee them and so on and so forth that are based in the Congress. But, this is all basic civics at the end of the day. Islam. So, it's 8:32. I'm going to wrap it up here because I don't want to be too long-winded this week because you guys, got all kind of stuff to do, and I'm sure y'all got a life, But when we're looking at, things, and we're looking at words, and we're trying to figure out how to break things down, Islam, we want to be aware of semantics, syntax, and symboliography. I'm just going to read these short little blips here, and out of Worship the Speller, again, REA Publications, it's page 63, right? So these are things we want to keep in mind when we're trying to deconstruct or build, on other documents going forward. Islam. So the semantics. Semantics is plural in form and is used with a singular verb. It is that study of science of meaning in language forms, in particular with regard to its historical change. In quote-unquote logic, semantics is the study of the relationships between signs and symbols and what they represent or represent. Semantics is also called semantiology or semantics. And so, when one hears a person make a statement along the lines of, oh, you're just using semantics, quote-unquote, when attempting to take the upper hand in a debate or argument, beware, as semantics are key to unraveling truth and falsehoods in language. Syntax, right? Because, semantics, so then now moving on to syntax. Syntax is the way in which words are put together to form phrases in sentences, and thus look at syntax as systematic arrangement. So whenever you look at the words, look at the semantics or the logic, right, behind the words that are being used and the phrases that are being used, And then look at the syntax of them. Look at how they're being placed in their particular order. Look at where the commas are put. Look at where the colons are put. You know what I mean? And, you know, determine what's a qualifier, you know, what's a verb, parts of speech, and all of that good stuff. You know, be aware of all these things, because that can help you determine and to be able to clearly measure anything that's being presented to you as de jure or de facto. You know, constitutional, unconstitutional, right, wrong. All right. And then last but not least, symboliography. Symboliography, and be thinking of any last minute questions, and then I'll be thinking of the homework, or y'all be thinking of what y'all want to do for homework. So symboliography is the art or science of properly framing or drawing up legal instruments. This should be taken into consideration by the true Al-Moroccan natural peoples, because many have not been aware of its usage in the construction of all forms of contract. All forms of contract. Contracts include the following instruments: licenses, permits, all tax forms, guarantees, agreements, covenants, constitutions, treaties, mortgages, stock instruments, marriage licenses, birth certificates, sales agreements, social security cards, and many other forms of contract which are used in the most mundane operations of social, economic, religious, and political life. Therefore, ignorance and naivete are enemies of freedom and justice. Again, observe and study the strategic uses of quote-unquote miseducation as a domestic, quote-unquote domestic war tool and its daemonic value to slaveholders. And just to reiterate, you know, that's why I was bringing up the whole speech about and talking about the Rockefeller Education Board, because when you're talking about, you know, ignorance and the use of symboliography, you've got to realize that miseducation, along with propaganda, are very, 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 very powerful war tools when you're dealing with the unaware mind. Okay? But once you have certain cardinal reference points, you know, that will line you up with the timeline of things, it's kind of hard to get confused at that point. You know? And then the miseducation, you know, again, and the false evidence appearing real associated with that miseducation dissolves, and then all that remains is the truth. So with that, I say Islam, peace and love. And as far as the recording, I'm gonna go on and end it here, and then I'm gonna give the homework out to you guys here in the room, and then everybody following along, you guys will just have to get on activemoors.com to get with us and find out what's going on next. So bye bye to y'all. All right. So the sense of caution, it could be a number of things. The sense of caution could be from the realization that most of the time, and this has just been my instance of seeing people who knew about nationality and all of a sudden they're trying to get on. Typically, they heard about nationality and birthrights either, you know, when they were younger or from somewhere else, right? And oftentimes, unfortunately, they don't do any research into it. So when we're dealing with the matrix, so now we're back on the Ustream Islam for part 2. So yeah, just kind of winding up with things. You've got to understand your status, you know, your name. So you understand the importance again of your name, Judicial Proclamation, Islam. So now it's 8:10. We got about 20 minutes left. I'm gonna open the floor up. Everybody, you can turn your mics on, you know, and all that good stuff. Hit me in the chat if you've got any questions. But at this time, I'm just kind of opening the floor, and some things you're looking at, quote unquote, sovereign citizen claims, right? Which is what Europeans started. You're looking at Negroes claiming to be Moors who try to tell Moors that they need to be naturalized into a corporate, wardship structure that has nothing to do with the Constitution at the end of the day. But then they want to use they want to try to use the civil rights, and Lincoln and all of that stuff as justification as to why you have to go this route. And you've got other quote unquote grand sheiks out there who we'll just kind of go from there and just have closing remarks like we do. Little Q&A if we can get it in. But yeah, if you guys got any questions, like I said, hit me in the chat box. If you are seeing this later on Ustream or YouTube, message me. You can always hit the channel, or you could leave a comment in the comment box, or you can email me. And we'll roll those questions over into next class if need be. But yeah, it looks like somebody's typing right now. But yeah, so that's pretty much my spiel. I just wanted to make sure that you guys had a basis and understanding as to why we do the name, and Judicial Proclamations. And I wanted you guys to read that so that you'd have a context as to what I was talking about today when I started going into some of these other things, because these documents are actionable documents, but for protocol purposes, we reiterate that they need to be in place to keep things in harmony and in order so that everybody is on the same page. But Islam, we got a question just came in. So it's peace. Why is there a sense of caution that I sense from some Moors in terms of claiming nationality?